Good Friday, I guess. I mean, I think it's Friday everywhere. So, we're here with Lars, and I kind of feel like I'm a little bit lucky today because I quite like Lars. I quite like what he does. I quite like his art and his photography, and I get to actually spend 2 shows with him today. This is the first one. We're gonna have a deep dive look into his Pomelo proposal. And then shortly after, at the top of the next hour, you're going to come over and join us on the Uplifters and talk about Dark Pinup 2, which is coming out in a couple days now, I guess. But yeah, welcome to Pomelo Pitch Deck. We're happy to have you here. And yeah, how's it going?
Thanks, man. It's going good. Yeah, just kind of like recovering from like a really busy Thanksgiving day. Visiting friends and stuff, and we have a little coffee shop out here called Cafetto that's like really kind of become sort of like just this community space, and we almost lost it during COVID. We ended up doing a GoFundMe during the worst parts of the early pandemic, and we raised like 12 grand for the place just so they could bridge until the pandemic loans started hitting like the local businesses. So I am thankful that it did not close. We had like a little potluck last night.
Yeah, that's really cool. That I never really thought about like a GoFundMe for an active coffee shop or business that was getting hit by COVID. But I guess it makes sense, especially in the area that you're from, because there's a lot of community orientation there, right?
Yeah, Minneapolis is like that. That's one of the things that drew me to this city. Is I'm originally from Scranton, Pennsylvania. So when I first started coming out here, just a lot of things, I don't know, like concepts, like the idea of a co-op, like that was not something I ever even knew existed in Pennsylvania. So a lot of things out here are like community centric and co-op centric. And now that now I'm a blockchain guy, like it's really hard for me to not see the comparisons and relations to like DAOs and DAX and things like that. So it's like these things exist in the real world.
Yeah, but like not that often. Like I'm kind of interested in this coffee shop idea and this GoFundMe, right? Because like you said, it's a community. They don't want the place to close. I'm sure there was a hangout. Like it's probably not that far off from Pomelo grants, really, if we're thinking about it, right?
In fact, one of the pieces of art that I shared in the Pomelo grant was this kind of it was something I was kind of inspired to draw after kind of like the George Floyd unrest here in Minneapolis. So like, not to get into the political side of all that because it's all become so politicized, but like, we have an autonomous zone where George was murdered, and it's called you can actually see it on that Pomelo grant there. See the shot you right at the very top.
Oh, sorry.
And yeah, right there to the page that's open, the one that's across from Editorials. There's like this. So what that is that's an illustration of this like protester, whatever you want to say, standing face to face with a National Guardsman. And that was a really, really common thing that we saw here in Minneapolis last summer. And it was very unsettling. It's funny because like it's funny where you fall in on the experience. I don't know if I'd call them friends. Most of my friends have a pretty clear expression of that whole time, but there are people out here that I know that were very comforted by seeing National Guard, and these were mostly like the people out here in the city that were kind of scared of the protesters, or thought that all protesters were burning the city down. I didn't feel that way myself because I was involved in a lot of the protesters, and most of my friends were protesters, and I mean, I didn't get too involved in the really extreme stuff, but I definitely had friends that were involved in the burning down of the 3rd precinct. So for me, at least, when I saw National Guardsmen with, AR-15 or M16s or AR-15s or whatever, that made me feel occupied. So I did not feel safe. I felt occupied, and I didn't like that. I mean, we had curfews. There was like National Guards troops that were like shooting people with pepper bullets on their porches and shit. So I did not like that. I did not like that feeling. So anyway, I did that illustration for EOS Detroit as part of our proxy prospectus that we release every quarter. And if you read it there, I don't know how much you can zoom in, but
yeah, that's about my limit here on this page.
Yeah, the National Guard person is saying who's in charge here, and the protesters saying all of us, which was sort of a revolutionary idea in my head, because I grew up as this like punk rock kid that, you know, basically was all about anarchy, even though I didn't really understand it. And my idea of anarchy was like nobody was in charge of anything. And actually, as I've gotten older and I've especially been introduced to like blockchain and like, you know, the idea of decentralized communities and things like that, I've started to realize that like it's really not about no one being in charge, but like everyone being in charge, like everyone having a say in whatever they think an expression of governance is in a community. And to tie that back to what you were saying about Cafetto, yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing. It's a coffee shop. You know, there's people that are hired there to be baristas, but there has been these like little, man, I don't know what you would call them, I guess roles or responsibilities that have been kind of taken on by the regular people that hang out there. So like we have this one woman who just loves plants, and the coffee shop has a bunch of like little, you know, succulents and like, you know, plants in the windows, and she doesn't get paid by the coffee in every few days, and she waters everything just because she wants, you know, we all love having the plants there, and she goes around and waters them because she likes to. I have, for some reason, I've been indoctrinated, or I guess I'm the assumed bouncer. So when like somebody walks in there and like maybe is drunk, or if they're like causing shit, or if they're whatever, I always end up being the one that has to throw them out. That just like, you know, and I don't get paid by the coffee shop. It's just sort of my role. If I'm there, if somebody's like causing shit, I have to intervene. But
I dread the day that you're gonna have to throw me out, because I kind of cause shit wherever I go.
Oh man, the bar. I'm
not the bad kind of shit though. Like I just I cause good kind of shit, but sometimes.
Well, the coffee shop is across from a gas station, and it's next to a liquor store. So the bar is pretty high to cause shit to get thrown out. But the thing I do like about the coffee shop though is it's like a very welcoming space. Definitely all ethnicities, and like I mean everyone's definitely welcome there, and it's a very diverse clientele. But like also, I mean, I've seen like heroin addicts come in, shoot up in the basement, and then crash out on the couch. And you know, as long as they're not messing with anybody, they don't get thrown out. You know, it's just like a very kind of like judgment free zone. You really have to.
Do you have to show your passport? It sounds like Vancouver.
No passports. No passports. Yeah.
No, it's interesting because I went to school just north of there, north of the Canadian border.
Okay.
In around that same area. I'll leave that to the imagination. The home of Paul Schaefer, actually, and so I can kind of resonate with that, because Thunder Bay was a lot like that as well. So
yeah. Vancouver is a cool city. I've only been there once, but I really enjoyed it. That's one of the first places I'm looking to go back once things start opening up and borders open up again.
Right? Maybe I might be there by then.
Yeah,
we're planning on making a trip. So I like this proposal. I'll tell you why. Because this proposal has Lars written all over it, or drawn all over it, depending on how you like to put it together. And it's cool. So you know, people can read about the EOSIO spirit of the dragon that ignited the fire of creation. She sent the foundational elements cascading across the earth, and with the formation of life, humanity began facing its own struggles. How to govern, how to allocate resources within communities, clans emerged, many with different points of view, but with a different collective heart on the opportunity given to them by the sacred dragon. I like this as part of this proposal. This kind of makes me smile, because like I actually wasn't aware that this proposal was for all EOSIO. I kind of just assumed that this was another one that was only going to the benefit of EOS. But I found out on the first interview that I did with Daniel Keyes that actually the what do you call it? Like the base for being included on the Pomelo grants proposal was that you would benefit the EOSIO ecosystem. And I can honestly say that nobody else has, illustrated that probably as well as you did with these clans, and I like it. So yeah, what is EOS Zine, or EOS Zine, I guess,
Yeah.
and Immutable Realms? And I'm really curious as to how it benefits EOSIO. How does it benefit the EOSIO ecosystem?
Well, so this has always sort of been my expression of my journey through blockchain. I'm an artist and a storyteller. I write. I do things like this, creative things. And when I first found all this, it was through Steemit in 2016. And Steemit was great because it was basically it opened the door to artists. It was a long form publishing platform where you could kind of share art or stories or whatever, and you can get rewarded for it in crypto. So that was like my introduction to this whole world. That was my Neo red pill moment. And since then, I mean, things have happened. I mean, I really started following Dan's work with DPAWS, which led me to EOS. So I was like all in on EOS, like right from the very first like 0 token distribution. I was like right there, and I was wide-eyed and hopeful. And I've watched EOS evolve quite a bit since 2018 when it launched. And one thing that I keep seeing is like, if I'd say there was a missed opportunity, it's marketing and messaging. And I mean, I just see a lot of the community kind of frustrated and feeling somewhat abandoned by like Block One. There was a lot of things that we were, promised that haven't really happened. And then there's a whole other group of people that are frustrated with the token price and everything. But ultimately, there's not much being said about it. Most of the conversation around the things that are frustrating are by the community just basically spinning their own wheels and kind of just going off on Twitter rants and things like that. And I always looked to try to like do things like this. Like when I started working, when I was hired by EOS Detroit, the idea was that I was going to start doing these comics like the one you have up on the screen there, to kind of like reach people, like to basically tell some positive stories about the things that are happening in the EOS space, but to also like bridge and reach some people that are not blockchain nerds, like regular people that like don't care about transaction speeds and things like that, like, or consensus algorithms or like resource management. Like, I mean, that stuff is cool for us, but it's like it's honestly a barrier to like the average person. So I thought comics would be like a really cool way to like reach some new people, but also entertain or maybe alleviate some of the frustrations that are happening on a more nuanced level within the community. And that was it. So actually the EOS Zine thing, Immutable Realms, is what I eventually fell on with the title, which I really like the title. This is actually something I've wanted to do for a long time. I've wanted to do this for like a couple of years, and it's only since Pomelo. I mean, I knew when Pomelo showed up on my radar, I was like, oh man, like this is perfect. Because I was at the time I was explained to it, it's almost like a GoFundMe or a Kickstarter for built on EOS. And so yeah, that's what I would like to do for EOS. But as far as EOS.io, like you said with the Spirit Dragon comic there, like I'm deeply, as you know, Jimmy, like I'm deeply in the Wax ecosystem. And so I love seeing the projects. I'm also a big fan of like Luke Stokes and the stuff he does with FIO. So it's really neat to see all these different projects that were purpose built on EOS.io. And I want to like put some attention on the achievements of like those other projects. And the way I do that is art. So that's what I would like. That's I guess you'd say my Pomelo pitch.
Since I've been doing these, because I've done quite a few in the last week or two, I've had the chance to kind of sit down and think about what's happened over the course of the last couple of years. And actually, you just kind of summed up a lot of what I had been thinking, right? Like a lot of these people that have built out these other chains that are running on EOS.io. They just got tired of waiting, and they just went and they did it, right? And for the most part, like Wax, Ultra, FIO, they just went and they got shit done, right? And they didn't look back. And they built what they wanted to build, right? Like Wax tailored to the art and to gaming and NFTs, right? Ultra tailored to the gaming, FIO tailored to like usability and trying to like bring people into the ecosystem and enabling interoperability between other blockchains, essentially, right? I mean, Telos, don't get me wrong, but we all know Telos has been, they've been quite verbal about their dislike for certain things in EOS, and Proton as well, right? Now, that's not to say that they haven't done great things in their own right. Telos came out with the EVM. They're killing it in terms of what they're doing, and Proton is doing some really interesting stuff as well. But it's funny now because it's kind of like all of these other chains in a way, they left EOS behind. And now EOS is finally getting the funding through like things like Pomelo or the EOS Network Foundation. And they're going to finally, have this funding. But it's going to be interesting to see because once all of these dApps get built out, I think a lot of people are like you. They've got, tendencies towards at least one or two other blockchains. And there's going to be a lot of, projects that I've interviewed that are like, yeah, we're going to start with EOS, but then we're going to try to bridge some of these other chains, right? And so that's really exciting that like, for me that we can see this, like maybe some of these chains will come back and help to feed EOS and vice versa the other way through the system. So
yeah, and I same thing. I have especially in the EOS.io space, I'm somewhat agnostic. I definitely have a heavy bias towards Wax for NFTs, obviously, but that's because
how can you not?
How can you not be? But man, you mentioned Ultra, and I snapped up a bunch of Ultra maybe a year ago, and how about that? These last few days,
right? And that's the funny thing is like even Wax in the broader crypto space, like it went doubled almost, maybe like almost tripled, like maybe like
Wax has changed my life, like not even exaggerated, because. Yeah, I was invested heavily in Wax, and then, we'll come later on today. We'll talk about Dark Pinup, but Dark Pinup did outstanding on Wax and sold out, and and I basically just held my bag. I didn't have, I knew that was coming at some point, like a big crazy runaway, and so yeah, it's been life changing, man, life changing.
Well, and like Ultra too, like even beyond the EOS ecosystem, EOS.io ecosystem, like people didn't, like I have friends of mine, hey, what's going on with Wax? What's happening? I'm like, well, it was bound to happen, right?
Yeah.
But nobody's even paying attention to Ultra. I think a lot of people in EOS.io aren't paying attention to Ultra. Like the amount of gains in the last week are ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
And there's all these interesting things coming out. I haven't fact checked this, but somebody mentioned that potentially the creative director of Ultra might somehow have connections to, Meta. I'll just leave it there. But it's really interesting, right? Like Telos as well, right? Like they've been doing some really cool stuff too. And I think a lot of people who have been in these other chains have just, seen themselves, do quite well over the last little while. Now, it might be EOS's turn, and I'm excited to see what you do with this because, like you said, this was kind of your plan from the beginning was to have this, educational tool in a way that people like. I'm a writer. That's what I do for the Uplift. But like, I'm well aware that the majority of people don't read my content, right? Like, it's like, but people do tend to read comics a little bit more, right? Like, or look at photos a little bit more, or like videos and things like that.
So I describe it in the grant proposal, but the idea is that, I would do these, I would do this zine, and then basically like the final PDF of the zine would be released publicly for free. So it wouldn't cost anybody anything and then there would actually be a release of the print file. That way, if anyone just wanted to run these off themselves and staple them together, it could be like pretty much a global thing. Anyone could download the files and then do half page 8.5 by 11 sheet, just foldovers. And, because zines were again, when I was a young punk, that was probably the coolest thing. Like, I mean, the music, the whole social um, commentary through punk rock was like just something I was drawn to. But like really the publishing, when I started finding out zines, I had all these like little like crust punk friends that were doing zines about Tibet back in like the, you know, I guess it would be late 90s. These things like veganism, I didn't know anything about it. And it was great because it was like it was sort of the truest I don't know, like truest, most raw expression of like, you know, kind of subcultures. And you know, EOS is obviously this juggernaut as far as like fun, you know, as how much money was raised and everything like that. But still, I mean, it's like all of this stuff, blockchain in general is still a subculture, you know. I actually saw a statistic, you know, based on like NFTs, and you know, like the NFT market is like somewhere in the ballpark of like $1.5 trillion and like the actual art, like physical art world, which is just like all the you know, the galleries in New York City and like all in cities, it's like $6 trillion. So even the amount of money that we're seeing generated, it's still like marginal compared to like the non-blockchain world. So we are still very much in a subculture. And my hope, my idea with Pomelo was to kind of use the platform and the zine to kind of like, you know, kind of be exactly that, like just kind of embrace the fact that we're a subculture. We're still a bunch of like blockchain, you know, kind of misfits. And like it would be an opportunity because like one of the parts of Immutable Realms I wanted to do is even like go into like editorials, like grab people's you know, like you, like I would love to like talk with you about like your wax opinions and things like that, and do editorials and kind of like exposés, and you know, and you know, to some degree, not it probably wouldn't be, the zine probably wouldn't be all like fluff and great stuff. Like I'd love to get some of those frustrations out and like talk about them in a very true, honest way, because I think that's a great way to move forward instead of just doing like puff pieces all the time on
right. Yeah.
You know, so
well, I like it. I like the fact that like the long-term plan, the goal is if you get enough funding, the goal is to translate it into at least 5 different languages. So that's cool, because one of the big issues that we have in the EOS ecosystem, I think, is we've got like this kind of division between East and West when it comes to, you know, the Chinese and the Westerners. But then we've also got like these little subgroups that aren't necessarily clearly represented either, like the Vietnamese or like the Indonesians or, you know, like the Turkish, all I think which were on your list of things that you wanted to translate to. And they play a really big role, especially in EOS when it comes to that. And so like I think having something out there that everyone can kind of like and appreciate and read, even though it's in a different language, they can still all kind of, you know, rally around and see the same thing. So that's one thing I quite like about it. I mean, and the second thing, just what you were mentioning before, like, yeah, why not, right? Like I do interviews with people, and like people watch them and they like them, right? But like Crypto Writer, they do you know, print interviews with people, you know, ask questions, and but imagine if you have, and there's a friend of ours over on Ethereum mostly, but you know, he's one of these Bored Ape yacht guys. He got in really early, and we like him because he builds in the uplift, and we hang out with him sometimes. And he does the show basically about nothing, and he just puts these two like avatars, these two Bored Apes on the screen, and they barely move. And like a little bit they move, but then they talk, and he asks the questions and the other guy answers, but it's their actual avatars, and people love it. It's great, right? And so like, why not have an episode where, or like a little segment in the comic where somebody actually sits down with Brock Pierce, or somebody is like screaming at Brock Pierce for doing what they think is wrong, or you know, like the you know, meanwhile behind the scenes you have Eva Rose, Brock Pierce, and Brenda Plummer, you know, sitting, drinking tea, talking about like the future of EOS, or the future of what could have been, or whatever the hell they talked about. We don't really know, right? Not at this point yet. But like, I think it would be really cool, and a really cool way to document it, right? Like really unique, and not very many other blockchains, I don't think, maybe potentially no other blockchains have done this, right? Like as a historical type of categorization, which is really cool.
So I'll tell you this quick. So actually the original, like the genesis for this idea was something I proposed on Steemit, because Steemit had, like, there was all these milestones they were trying to reach, and I was a regular user of Steemit until, I mean, now I'm a Hive user, but like up until that point, there was like an SPS that was on the roadmap. They were going to have this work proposal system, and I was like, oh my God, as soon as this comes out, I'm gonna do this. And so I basically submitted a work proposal for like a zine, or like a it was a comic called Steemian and the Bear. And the idea was everybody was frustrated with the Steam price, and actually the whole bear market, really, because like, do you remember that was like 2018, 2019? That was a dark time, and there was like no enthusiasm. So I had this idea for this comic. There was a good guy, the Steemian, who was like this superhero, kind of like an Iron Man type character, and the bear, and he was like this big Russian, like Zangief character, right? There was no storyline. It was just us. It was basically portraying where we were in the bear market. So if the market was going down, the bear was beating the shit out of the Steemian. But if it jumped up, the Steemian would actually land a few elbows and, like, or right hooks and stuff, and fight back a little bit. So it's like, I didn't really dictate it. Really, the market dictated how it went. And it was like fun, and everybody really liked it. Like, community liked it and stuff. So I thought it'd be kind of like a shoe-in for like a work proposal thing. That caused my proposal caused such a controversy on Steam because like all the old school work proposal people from like the BitShare days were like, that's not what a work proposal's meant for. It's for software development, blah blah blah. If you want to do art, just post it in your normal blog. And a lot of people didn't agree with that. A lot of people were like, no, bullshit. Like, if he's going to release comics and it's going to help the Steam ecosystem, I think that's an accurate reflection of the proposal system. And at the time, that was right before NFTs like really took off like crazy. And once that happened, I feel like that ended up being, it never got funded. That's the spoiler alert. It never got funded. But I actually thought that was a massive missed opportunity, because NFTs came right after that, and we could have had the same idea, comics in like we could have had Steam comics in physical comic book shops, and got funded, so it never happened. So in some ways, I'm trying to rectify that with this EOS zine with Immutable Realms. And I mean, a lot has changed since then. Like, we all appreciate NFTs. There's a much greater appreciation for the value art brings to blockchain.
Right. And I like it. Like, what happens, like you said, what happens if or when, whichever comes first, EOS takes over the world and somebody decides, hey, wait, there's this thing that happened a few years ago that was put out there that was like, funded, and we can print copies and we can put them everywhere. Like, that's pretty cool, actually, right? Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be tomorrow. It doesn't necessarily have to be next week. I mean, with that kind of caveat in there that basically states, that it can be done, then people can do it later, right? And I think that's really cool. So, right. But, we're gonna have to wrap this one up. I don't actually feel bad about that at all, because I'm gonna hang out with you again in about 5 minutes. But I'd like to make another cup of tea and stretch my legs. But thanks for joining us. Again, if you go over to Immutable Realms EOS zine, on the Pomelo grants page, you'll be able to find the proposal, read through the pages of the comic, I guess, yourself, the book yourself, and the rest of the proposal things in more detail. And if you like it, of course, donate 1 or 2 or 3 or however many, like a small amount is fine, because this is quadratic funding. So just every little bit gets matched, and every little bit will help. And like Lars said, this might be good, because like people might pick this up, they might read about it, They might read about what's happening in EOS. They might read about what the beauty and the benefits of EOS.io technology are, or NFTs, or any of these types of things that otherwise would just ignore EOS because they've seen the FUD on Twitter, or they've seen the FUD, you know, coming from other communities. If there's art, like, you know, we can always say that, like, there might actually be a reason for people who might not really give a crap to, like, actually care about it. So I like it. I'm a fan.
Thanks, Jimmy.
And we'll see you guys, I think, you know, probably after the weekend. I'm probably take the weekend off for pitch decks, but like, I know we got some stuff coming out Monday and Tuesday. So if you're around, please tune in for those. And if you like this, please share it out, because the more likes and views we get for Pomelo pitch decks, the better our chances at just blowing this ecosystem up with all these amazing projects. This one as well. We'll see you guys later. Thanks.